Node.js. So my name is Schott. I work at Box, just down the road in the Bay Area. And I'm going to talk about this module called CLS. Continuation local storage, or location storage, sorry. And it's going to blow your mind. So first off, I want you to kind of imagine a chain of function calls. This can be anything from express middleware or async flow, some async series of callbacks, just a series of callbacks. And kind of a simple example here, won't get too deep with it, but let's say at the top, our first middleware, we want to get a user out of the database. So we do that, and then that's kind of it, right? Next doesn't take a user parameter, and even if it did, you wouldn't want to have to worry about passing it all the way down your call chain, so you're kind of stuck. And then at the bottom, our final middleware, we want to get that out, and we don't have it. So you're kind of hosed. You can't say hello. And so there are a few solutions for Express. There's a pretty common one, because it's a pretty common problem, and that's leveraging the request object. So if you understand that request is passed from middleware to middleware to middleware, you can say, hey, I can attach users at the top, and at the bottom, it'll still be there. So there you go, good solution, right? And that does work for a simple example like this. Some people might argue that user isn't really a property of the request, but don't worry about that. Cool, so let's I don't know, maybe you want to translate the string. It would be a good web app, translate it to the user's locale. So let's translate it, and then we probably want to, let's see what else we can do. Maybe a SDK client for the user's tokens. Maybe do some tracing, some logging. There's a feature flip I've been wanting to do for a while. Kind of sucks, right? It doesn't really work too well. It's a silly example, but it does kind of illustrate how the request object can become a mess. And eventually you will find yourself putting stuff onto it that doesn't really belong there. And even if you somehow find a way not to do that, your modules that want to leverage this will. And so then you have to worry about collisions, clutter, disaster. So enter our protagonist, Forrest Norval. He was the guy who first came up with CLS, along with this other guy named Trev Norris, I want to say. And I'm sure there is actually a photo of him, but it's his GitHub avatar, and it seems fitting. He works for New Relic, and they do logging and tracing stuff for Node applications. And so they needed a solution to this problem. They wanted to be able to attach metadata as you went down the call chain and get it back when you wanted to write a log, without having to pass every single thing you wanted as a parameter, as a object. And so he started a discussion in the Node core, and some of it wasn't really possible without modifying Node. So after a little bit of a discussion, he submitted the first pull request for CLS, which was August 8th, so a little while ago. He's been working on it for a while. And the idea was a way to do just that, to attach stuff along the call chain that lived scoped within that call chain that could be accessed at any time. And so the only way you could do this at the time was domains, which if anyone's worked with, there's a few problems with that solution. It's slow, there's a performance hit, not just for when you want to use them, but for even just including them in your application. So have fun explaining that to your users why you're slowing them down. And it's also not really what it's for. It was more for error handling and just kind of scoping stuff within that. So that wasn't really the solution that anyone wanted to use, and they came up with this. They couldn't do that without modifying the Node core. So there was a large discussion of should this be included, should this be a part of some other feature that's added, and eventually it was decided that the way that this interfaces with Node was added as async listeners, and then this can remain in user land since they're very conservative about what they add to the actual Node. So this lives in user land, you can get it on GitHub, and I'll just go through a quick example of how you want to use that. So here's our original example. You want to get the user and then access it later down. And so the first thing you need to do is create a namespace. That namespace is now tied to the life of this call chain. Any functions that are called below this, or even above, whenever the call chain started, have access to this namespace, barring that they know the ID. And so you get back the session, you set the user, and then all the way down your call chain, you can get it out. Really cool, really insane. Boom. Definitely something that now you don't have to worry about the request. You can do this if you're not even in Express. You can do this with just a series of callbacks. So it's super cool. It gets a little complicated, so I don't have enough time to go into it, but it supports anything you can really imagine yourself doing. Native functions, cool crypto stuff, Even the kind of crazier stuff like next tick, set timeout, set interval, all of this stuff is can be maintained or can maintain your context. And there's nesting, there's just so much stuff. It's really cool. So definitely check it out. I've posted some links on my Twitter account, which is down there. And yeah, start using it. It's super cool. Thank you. Yes, questions?
It was one of the main purposes that you don't actually have to have the request object passed down?
Yeah, so this will work completely independent of Express. It could just be a series of function calls if that's what you want. Yeah, it's really cool.
Because I mean, without that, I'd kind of say, well, big deal, because you just create an object and you stick it on a map and you
so
put it in there.
the two main things that would not be able to do that would be a module, if you have some sort of module that had a request chain that wasn't within Express, and logging and tracing. You don't want to have to pass in that request to your logger to make calls with that data. Same for some tracing stuff. So anytime you don't want to have to worry about passing that request object, it's perfect. It can do it within any part of the call chain and get that data out for you.
So in the example that you showed, do you generate like a UUID for like every request that comes in?
No, so that's the beauty of it. It actually will be independent, I guess, unique for each request. So by creating that namespace for demo 1, for each request that goes through this, even if they're asynchronous and crisscrossing, it'll know that that's your request and get back the data relative to that request. So, yeah.
What about freeing up memory? Like, is there a way to dispose of?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a memory cost, much better than domains, but it's there. I think there have been a few complaints, nothing like major. But I think it's smart enough to know when to get rid of them. I don't think there was any like real problems other than you might notice a little bit of an increase in memory intake, memory use.
Sorry, you probably said it already. How does it know the context? I mean, is it using some domain
Yeah, I'm
tricks?
trying to remember. I made this big point to actually like make sure I knew everything about it, and then I got tired and I kept making the slides and I made them perfect. And so
it's actually documented pretty well.
Okay.
If you look at it, it's interesting. And if you don't mind me,
yeah, no, go seriously. Yeah.
What I think is a great solution. What I like about it, if anybody ever did any like, God forbid, programming in a Windows environment, and thread local storage, it was the same kind of thing. So I'm sorry. Thread local storage, and this was common for web requests where people would attach like credentials and stuff to the thread, since the thread was getting dispatched for every request. And you had the ability, without having to pass your request object around, same thing, you could pull the credentials off the thread in thread local storage. So I think it's an awesome solution.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I wish I had an answer. I'm sorry, but yeah, very well documented. You can check it out. Any other questions? Cool. Yeah, check it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.